Dean
Howdy,
Welsh, you want
everyone,
to? Yeah,
and
perfect.
welcome to the Bank of America program on volunteerism. My name is Mark Welsh, and I am lucky to serve as the Dean of the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University. And tonight we're going to investigate and I think celebrate the role of nonprofits and philanthropy in fostering equity for every citizen of our city, our states, and our country. We have three phenomenal panelists tonight who I would like to personally thank for inspiring us over the years with both their personal and their professional example, because they are really impressive people. We also have a phenomenal moderator from our own Bush School faculty tonight who impresses all of us here every single day, and you're going to love her. You'll get to meet all of them in just a minute, but let me start by adding that all of you are pretty impressive as well. We have people joining the call tonight from government, both local, city, state government. We have people from universities and colleges around Texas and around the nation. We have local community leaders. We have government leaders, and we have students from multiple colleges and multiple different disciplines, along with faculty members from those same institutions. Thank you so much for everything you do for all of us collectively, and thanks for joining us tonight. Let me kick the evening off by introducing a gentleman who we know well here at the Bush School, and many of you have known well, at least by reputation. He is very active in both volunteerism and in the nonprofit world. He's the chairman of the Points of Light Foundation. He's a member of our namesake's family, and he is a great supporter of the Bush School, serving as our chairman of the board of advisors here for some time now. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Neil Bush.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that very warm introduction. And thank you, more importantly, for your leadership of the institution that meant so much to my father. As chairman of the advisory board of the Bush School, as a member of the advisory committee for the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy, and chairman of the advisory board of Points of Light, I'm delighted to offer greetings to everyone in attendance today. What a special treat to have our distinguished professor, Dr. Robbie Robichau, moderate this discussion with an old Bush family friend, the Honorable Margaret Spellings, who served our nation so well working with my brother George, Dr. Ruth Simmons, who has implored her students, faculty, staff, and alumni to make fighting racism and discrimination and upholding justice among their highest callings, and Rick Jaramillo, whose sponsorship of this event and leadership in the Houston community are both greatly appreciated. My father referred to individuals who strive to make a difference in the lives of others as points of light. We are blessed to have three very bright points of light with us on the panel today. As we strive to make the structural and systemic changes needed to achieve equity for all, fairness and justice for all, we could start by mimicking the values that the Bush School's namesake lived by every day of his life, values that I'm certain our panelists had inculcated into them as kids. It starts with respect for others, with looking for the best in others, with putting yourself in the other person's shoes, with trying to find ways to lift your fellow man, ways to leave the world a better place. Before giving up the mic, I'd like to refer you to the Points of Light website, where in partnership with the Morehouse College, we have posted 4 episodes of Listen, Learn, Act to End Racism. This is a great resource that can be shared. I'm excited to listen in on this conversation, and I send heartfelt thanks to all who are participating and to all of those who have made this event possible, especially to our one and only leader of the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy, Will Brown, who I now introduce to you all. Will.
Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure to be able to be here with everybody this afternoon. Dean Welsh, Neil Bush, I appreciate you helping us kick off tonight, and it's an excellent conversation. Welcome to everybody. It's a pleasure to be able to be here, as I say, and to welcome you to the 19th annual Bank of America program on volunteerism. Bank of America, through its endowment to the George Bush Presidential Library and Foundation, established its program on volunteerism in 2000 to educate individuals and corporations on the importance of volunteer activities in today's modern society. Through civic responsibility and community service, Americans strengthen our social fabric, our participatory form of government, and our economy. I'm Will Brown, a director of the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy here at the Bush School of Government and Public Service, and I'm pleased to be able to be with you this afternoon for this important conversation. Nonprofits and philanthropic activity can and do make a big difference in leading toward a more just and equitable society. We realize that this is an ongoing initiative, an ongoing goal for us, and it's our highest ideal to enrich our diverse and vibrant society. I'm honored to be a part of the Bush School to carry forward a legacy of service reflected in the values of Texas A&M University and in the founding of our school. I want to say how much I appreciate everybody joining us, the staff at the Bush School, and I also want to give a big shout out to our advisory board. Of course, Neil serves on the Center Advisory Board. That's been important for us. Dr. Robert Ashcraft from Arizona State University, Chris Bugby from One Star Foundation, Doug French from Stylecraft Builders, Wynn Rosser, TLL Temple Foundation, and Adriana Culier Rojas of the United Ways of Texas have also been amiable and important advisors for us in our work. The agenda for the afternoon will provide an opportunity for a thoughtful discussion amongst our panelists. We'll have time at the end for question and answer, so I encourage you to use the Q&A function that's available to you as participants. We'll be monitoring and tracking that and be able to sort of feed those back to the moderator as we get going. And please feel free to put those in at any time if a question strikes your interest and you want to hear more about something. Tell you just a little bit about the center. Our mission is to support a vibrant and nonprofit and philanthropic sector in Texas and beyond. And we do this through our research, through our outreach, and through learning opportunities. We were founded in 2017. Belief that nonprofits are instrumental in creating opportunities for all. And that's why this program is important to us. And we feel that it's an important signal for the kinds of things that are important for us and an important conversation that we can continue to think about. Opportunities happen because of capable leadership, excellent governance, and engaged stakeholders. And we are committed to the principles of public service and democracy that value the diversity of thought and expression that's been a part of the school since our founding. I'd like to introduce our panelists. We were mentioned already, Mr. Rick Jaramillo from Bank of America. He's helped us envision this panel, and he plays a leadership role at the bank, and he has a deep commitment to the community, and he fully appreciates the work that's ahead of us, and we're lucky to be able to have him here this evening as part of our conversation. Dr. Ruth Simmons is currently president of Texas Prairie View A&M, and she brings also a deep appreciation for the work that's necessary to address systematic bias and an impressive record of success. And we're fortunate to be able to have Dr. Simmons with us. And the Honorable Margaret Spelling currently serves as president and CEO of Texas 2036. She also brings an impressive background and a deep understanding of the role of education to improve economic opportunities for all. This is an impressive and insightful panel, and I look forward to being able to turn it over to Dr. Robichau, who's a good colleague. We're very fortunate to be able to have Dr. Robichau here at the Bush School, and she's going to help navigate this conversation. As an assistant professor and an alum of the school, she explores important issues of nonprofit leadership and performance, and she's an important part of the school's future. With that, Robbie, I'm going to let you take the conversation.
Okay, greetings, everyone. I want to start with a thank you and echo what everyone else has already said. So thank you to our panelists, but I also am appreciative of the audience members. I think that your willingness to be here and engage in a conversation around social and racial justice is important, and it takes boldness and humility. And so one thing I'd like us to think about as we frame today's discussion is this idea that equity takes intentionality. It doesn't just happen by accident, and it takes us to be committed, to be open to an honest dialogue. But I think it also takes a certain amount of curiosity, us being willing to engage on this journey and this path of social justice. And so we are here to listen and support others. And I think for some of us too, it's an opportunity to feel heard and be a part of this sharing experience with other people that have had experiences around this topic. So we're here to engage in this authentic dialogue and also to kind of recognize these exceptional leaders who are really striving to move the needle and want to kind of encourage you and your institutions on this path of equity and what it looks like. And so we are excited that you're willing to be here and be a part of this conversation. And as I said, an important part of learning is asking questions. And so we do want you to be curious. So feel free to put all your comments or questions in the chat. And at the end, we'll wrap it up and we'll come back to that and we'll give everyone a chance to have their questions heard, hopefully. With that, like I said, I'm very honored to be here and continue my own journey of just listening and hearing what other people have to teach me. And so with that, let's get started. Our first question, I'm going to get started with Margaret. And so I would like for you to tell us a little bit about why diversity, equity, inclusion is important to you personally.
Well, I've been involved, had the great privilege of being involved in public policy in and out of government for a long time. I'll just leave it there. And it is a treat to be on this panel with these distinguished folks, as well as seeing this audience who labors in the vineyard of trying to do good work for our fellow our neighbors and fellow citizens each and every day. So I'm humbled by this opportunity. But the reason it's important to me is really twofold. Is, that if you know anything about public policy, there is no success for a state, for a country, without fully developing every single person. And whether you're talking about education policy and No Child Left Behind, or access to health care, or how people are treated in the workplace, or how they interact with our criminal justice system, on and on and on. It has to be about an attitude that we value, we respect, and we believe in the potential of every single person. And I had the great joy of working for the Bush family, I'll put it that way, for many years. And it is so much a part of their own ethic that they imbued really in so many ways to each of us who had the privilege of working there. So it's in my DNA, and it's also in what I do every day to make our state and our communities better.
Great. Ruth, would you like to comment?
Well, let me say how pleased I am to be with you all, and especially with these outstanding panelists and leadership of the Bush School. Margaret, thank you for your statement. I could certainly echo all of what you said, but I have to say that I come to this as one who was victimized by discrimination in our country. And once you've had that experience, and you actually know what it's like to be separated from your fundamental rights, to be thought of as inferior for no reason other than the fact that you are different from others, to grow up as a child believing that you would be excluded from all opportunity by virtue of your color, to see your parents and grandparents suffer that, and to know that the legacy is so long, that it endures for so many generations. I think when I was in high school in Houston, I certainly didn't have many aspirations. I didn't think I could have aspirations because society taught me that I dared not have aspirations. I thought that my fate in life would be to be a domestic worker, a maid like so many other of the women that I knew, including my mother. And it surprised me greatly to go to school and discover that, in fact, I didn't have to be what others said I had to be. And the notion that we have the opportunity to bring that kind of information to all children in our country, so that they know that they have the opportunity to aspire, they have the opportunity for equal treatment, that they're not impediments, false impediments to their success. How can you not work toward that end, to achieve that enlightenment for them, and then for the country in general? I often think about the legacy of hatred that we have been bequeathed in our country. And I think about what it does for us as a nation and how extraordinary it would be to have what Mr. Bush described as that respect for every other person, and to work toward seeing that they can have the same kind of satisfactory life. So anyway, I go on too long, but I'm passionate about this work because I know what it means to individuals and groups across the country who do not have access to justice and equality.
Yeah. Rick, would you like to add to that your personal desire to work in this area?
Sure, tough acts to follow, I would tell you, but I appreciate the truthfulness. And, I will tell you, first of all, let me just say thank you to the Bank of America Foundation for Underwrite this program. Thank you to Carrie Sullivan and her team. Also, let me just say to Neil, we have hosted this event several times live and in person back when we could social gather. And when your dad would walk in the room, oh my gosh, what a moment that would always be for all of us, to be able to be that close to the legend that he is. Thank you for continuing to share the vision. Let me just say, personally for me, the opportunity to share really is regarding my personal journey. Much like Dr. Simmons, I came from an environment where the odds were not stacked for me. I grew up in a barrio outside of Corpus Christi in a small town, Sinton. There's several Aggies that come from Sinton. Both of my parents only had a 6th grade education, and my mom was a maid in hotels and was also a maid in homes, and I would join her to clean some of those homes and clean some of those doctors' offices. And before she was stricken with the Parkinson's disease for 37 years, my dad was a laborer, a lunch pail carrying man that earned a hard living. I saw what real hard work was. Today, people ask me sometimes, Rick, are you working hard? And I'll say, well, I'm working a lot, but I'm not working hard. I've seen hard work. While my parents encouraged my siblings and I to get educated and let our imaginations, manage our future, they could not really help us around education or in college enrollment. They didn't know anything about college credits or GPAs, or much less about the professions that we went into. What they did give us was work ethic. And that's what each of my siblings have carried towards success, is that work ethic. My brother becoming a Texas Ranger, and my sister a hotel executive. Yeah, I'm the slacker in the family in banking and finance. I'm impressed by what they were both accomplished. And I was the last in my family to pick cotton. And if that wasn't hard enough work, I then went on to work on the railroad, swinging a sledgehammer. That was hard work. So to be where I am today because of the encouragement that I received from my parents and the encouragement that I received from bosses or managers that saw something in me that I often did not see in myself, and seeing people that come here from other countries. Our president, Hong Ogo, president of Bank of America Houston, comes from a different country, as did my grandparents. So the opportunity, if we just give people the opportunity, there's an opportunity there to experience what people bring to the table. To me, diversity is so much more than just skin color. It's a life experience. It's being from low income, from middle income, from high income, coming from a different country, being from private school, from community college, a historical Black college, or a Hispanic Serving Institute. All of that background is that diversity that is so valuable at the table today. We have a lot of work to do, but thank you so much to fellow panelists, and certainly to the organizations that are working to move the metric forward. Robbie?
Yeah, you all at some point said something about opportunities, and predominantly linked to education. And so I think that you all are trying to seize opportunities in your own institutions to have these discussions, to move this agenda forward. So can you tell me a little bit about this work and where you are currently and what that has looked like for you, why you prioritized this work and made that opportunity happen because of your experiences? So Rick, how would you like to go first this time?
Sure. Well, thank you. You know, I think for me, the opportunity to work for a company like Bank of America, you know, I don't know that everyone always has the opportunity to work for a company where the values align so closely. I get that opportunity through Bank of America. And that's why I haven't gone anywhere else, because I've always felt very welcome there. I always tell folks, look, I've had about 12 positions at Bank of America. I've never had to apply for any of them. It's always somebody tapping me on the shoulder and saying, here's what we want you to go do. Look, the environment that we establish at Bank of America and how we move that forward is a very inclusive. You know, 50% of our global workforce is women. 45% of our management team is women. And you know, we had a woman board of directors in 1949. You know, so there's some companies today, you still see in the headlines today sometimes where we're trying to get a woman on the board. At Bank of America, we did that in 1949. Our first Diversity Inclusion Council was 28 years ago. And we offered same-sex domestic partner benefits in 1998. I mean, this was unheard of at the time. The opportunity to work for such an organization that sees diversity and inclusion and sees it so important, this is where I feel like I can make a difference, because I can try to open the door for others that are trying to work through that journey very much like I am. You know, every day I still wake up thinking, you know, 26 years into my Bank of America career, I still feel every day, don't screw it up, you know, keep working hard. You have an opportunity. And what I'm here to tell you is that when you give people an opportunity that otherwise may not have had that opportunity, it's going to pay in so much dividends for you because of the work that they're going to do for your company, your nonprofit organization, your small business, your business organization, your corporation. They are going to add value. And when you come up with a situation like we are in now in a world pandemic, and you saw what happened with the winter storm and the disproportionately effects that it has on Black and Hispanic neighborhoods, communities, you see the work that we need to do and the short time that we have to do it in, because there's so much work that needs to be done. And like our CEO, Brian Moynihan, says, don't let the conversation die down. Dr. Simmons, you taught him so well. He says, you know, don't let it die down, keep the conversation going. We have a lot of work to do, and we must continue to live our values. And, you know, I feel so fortunate to be able to work for a company that feels that way every single day about our colleagues and our work. Robbie?
Yeah, Ruth, you want to kind of comment on what you're doing right now? And
I'm just finding this so enthralling, just listening to Robbie and Margaret, honestly. Look, to me, this work is part and parcel of who each of us has to be. When I think about the salvation of our country, I can't get there if this is not at the center of what every single person is willing to do. Because goodness knows, we're all different. We have different perspectives. We disagree about so many different things. But there's something fundamental here that allows us to be one nation. And that is a fundamental respect for others, the ability to understand that we are constitutionally entitled to certain basic rights, no matter who we are in this country. And so I think that no matter where I've been, the circumstances don't change for me. It means every day that I get up, some major part of what I do has to be done to make a dent in this, by reaching out to people who perhaps don't understand the importance of this, by pushing my students to embrace diversity in a way that they might not otherwise want to. Every opportunity that I have to speak to the issue of what this means to the country, I have to do that. Because what if we don't do it? What if we just let things continue on the current trajectory? I cannot imagine that. I'm very much afraid to imagine it. I do think that we have the opportunity to believe in a future different from what our past has been. That opportunity is always open to us. And so what I stress to my students is, don't ever think that nothing can be done. Every day, think about what you can do to make, to have an impact on this. Challenge yourself. I'm very leery of people who are fond of pointing the finger at other groups and other individuals and saying, well, you know, you have a problem and you need to improve. We all need to improve. There is not a group in this country that doesn't need to tackle the issue of hatred, race hatred among its members. There's not a single group. And so the work that we do as educators is really to help our students understand at a very fundamental level what their humanity means, what the opportunities are because of the gifts that God has granted us. What is it that we're able to do that other species can't do? How do you take that and make something very meaningful of your life? And so to me, this is one of the most meaningful things that we can all do, is to find ways to demonstrate our love and respect for others, and to go take the extra effort that may be necessary to reach across difference, to listen to people who have different opinions, to try to understand people who don't really understand this issue. All of that is extremely important in the educational context, and it's something that I think about all the time.
Thank you. Margaret?
So as the maybe resident, propeller head policy wonk, I look at it in a way that we have to help people using lots of data get out of denial about where we are and what the facts are, because there's a lot of this going on. And so when we look at a few things about our state, we're a big state. We're going to get bigger. We're a diverse state. We're getting more diverse. And we have an incredible asset in our human capital. If we play our hand right, we can lead the world. If we really believe that every individual matters and that we all deserve the kind of opportunity that we can bring to bear through public policy. And I used to say in my secretarial days that if half the school lunches were served, that half the school lunches were tainted that were served in cafeterias. This is back when we had school cafeterias, remember that? People would be on fire if half the kids were getting food poisoning. Half the kids not being able to read, nobody seems to care too much. Or leading the nation in the number of uninsured in this country. Texas is dead last, massive millions of uninsured people here, obviously largely low income and minority populations. And so we got to get out of denial about what the facts are around educational opportunity and health, housing, justice, the things that Ruth and Rick have confronted every single day of their lives. And so we can have a lot of committees or lofty rhetoric or whatever, but until we get under the hood and start dealing in the realities of putting our best teachers in our most challenging settings, caring about the number of uninsured in our state, et cetera, then we will not really fulfill the promise of the American dream for everyone, because we're not starting at the same starting line. And so I think our job at Texas 2036 is to elevate that data, to paint the picture, to help people get out of denial, but also to help people understand it's a beautiful world when we get this virtuous cycle of fully developing the potential of every single person. And there's plenty, you don't have to, you can just be self-interested and know that when everyone is meeting their full potential, we live in a great place. And, prosperity and I really believe this, that education is central to this, and something that we must do a much better job of. We are a laggard right now today. I take no joy in this, but in Texas, we have gone from 32 to 45th in reading over the last decade or so. And so we're going in the wrong direction right now. And we have to elevate that. And we have to convince our public policymakers that we got to not only be about it, but we got to get about it in making this opportunity real.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I hear y'all saying is this argument I heard in Paul Kivel's book, Uprooting Racism. And he says, right, there are moral and spiritual costs to tolerating inequalities all around us and exploitation of other people. And it kind of goes back to this focus on humanity and similarities versus difference. Like, there are costs. And we may, Margaret, to your point, you may be able to measure those costs and make a good case. To others, you need to work at the individual level to kind of spread the news of what's happening and help people unplug their ears. But there are costs to this, there are human costs. And I think some of us sometimes forget that. It costs people, it hurts. So I would love to hear a little bit about some of the strategies your organization is using to address these issues, to be more inclusive, to promote equity. What are some specific things that y'all are doing that we want our audience members to hear about? So Ruth, would you like to take that first? What are some things your Texas Prairie View A&M's doing over there?
Well, there's so many things, but I would highlight our central mission, of course, is to do what was done perhaps for Rick, but certainly for me. And that is coming up through the public schools. Public schools are so fundamental to addressing this issue. Coming up through the public schools. I had the advantage of an education that put me on a path to achievement. And it seemed to me, when I used to be president of Brown University, and when I retired and moved back to Texas, it seemed to me that this whole notion of all of our children in these schools that are underperforming, that if we took our time and committed ourselves to trying to help those children advance to achievement, then it would make all the difference in the world. And so the most important thing we do is we recruit students who without us probably would not go to college and would not achieve the success that they do, nor would they be able to lift their families out of poverty. That's a powerful, powerful calling for us, and the most important thing. And so I always say to schools and universities, don't forget the most important thing you're doing is educating young people to have a chance in life. But more recently, what we've done is to establish a Center for Race and Justice. And that center is trying to bring light to a persistent problem in the country, and trying to do it in a way that will bridge a lot of divides. We are in Waller County, which had some well-known problems. Sandra Bland was stopped just outside our gates. And as you may know, she was arrested for a minor offense, basically, and went to jail and then was found dead in her jail cell. So we have another alum who was shot in the driveway of his parents' home because the police mistook him for a thief. They thought that he had actually stolen the car that he was driving, which was his car. These are the kinds of things that wake us up every day and make us say to ourselves, we have a special responsibility to cast a light on the nature of this problem because it is so close to us. And so the Center for Race and Justice seeks to work with policymakers, with the justice system, with others who are formulating policy on the one hand, but also with the public to help them understand the nature of the problem and the magnitude of the problem that we're dealing with. And so it's just getting started, but we're making a very strong commitment to do the work of justice in the unique way that universities can. And that is by teaching our students, by teaching the public, by intervening in a policy way to advance the knowledge people have about these problems.
Margaret, could you add to that maybe a little bit about the policy perspective and what you're doing at the foundation?
Yes. So Texas 2036, as I like to say, if we put it on a bumper sticker, we're trying to put sensible people together to think long-term about the most important things: education, health, infrastructure, natural resources, justice, et cetera, using tons of data. And we have curated and are presenting and proffering many hundreds of publicly available data sets and elevating that information in ways that people can use and understand across these most important things. And so we're trying to, as I like to say, build civic demand for attending to these issues. In addition to that, we've set some goals for ourselves. 2036 is the bicentennial of Texas, as I'm sure everyone on this Zoom knows. And we use that as a sight line into, let's see, how far might we be able to get over the next 15 years? We also have set this data against a set of peers, 11 other states. So we established a bit of a space race formulation. Together, these 12 states represent 58% of the population of our country, 62% of the GDP. And in many of these indicators, as proud as we are of our mighty state, we fare very badly. And so we're trying to elevate and create a fact-based set of data for people to act on and attend to, and for us to understand we're in a race with our peers around the country and around the world. And we have a lot of work to do. To Ruth's point about education, that is a central issue. As a proud alumna of HISD and the University of Houston and Texas A&M, if we don't get our public university and K-12 systems suited up around fully developing our students, our children, our young people, we're going to go nowhere fast. So data. And I commend our website, texas2036.org, to folks on this call. And we're working, in fact, with the United Ways of Texas and United Ways around the state, because this data can help nonprofit organizations make the case about the work that you're doing in your community, but also compare yourself to other counties. How do you fare? Where are others doing better or worse? And so our data is publicly available and at your service to help nonprofit organizations around the state.
Rick, can you add a little bit about what the bank is doing? I mean, they're sponsoring these types of conversations, educational opportunities for anyone. Can you say a little bit more about some specific strategies y'all are employing there?
Sure, Robbie. We're having these conversations internally and externally. because these conversations can be so powerful. We're encouraged to have them. There's so many intersections, as one of my colleagues put it, with this panel, because we do quite a bit of work. We have a multi-year partnership with Texas 2036. Thank you, Margaret. Bank of America just continues to be impressed with the leadership and engagement of Texas 2036, a driving force for statewide policy change. And we never lose sight or vision of how important that policy change opportunity is. And the partnership that we have with Texas 2036 is really important there. And also being one of the founding partners of Aim Higher. Aim Higher, with higher being H-I-R-E, Aim Higher, Texas, a focus on diverse and equitable workforce. Margaret, I know you work very closely with Jennifer.
Yeah, Rick, thanks for the big shout out. And thank you to Bank of America for all that you do.
Oh, well, you guys are terrific. And Andrea Smith is a strong supporter of 2036 as well. And plus the work that we do with Prairie View A&M and Dr. Simmons, particularly around the work that we're able to do regarding our $1.25 billion 5-year commitment to advancing racial equality. That work is so important. Some of the things that we're doing, Robbie, include investments into private equity funds that focus on minority entrepreneurs, our investments into minority deposit institutions, including Unity Bank, a Houston-based Black bank. It's the only Black bank in Texas, sadly. And even distributing 25 million face coverings or masks that Bank of America did in low to moderate income neighborhoods to volunteers that work in those neighborhoods, or to some of those neighborhoods, some of the people that live in those neighborhoods. Think of even like in Houston and some of the families that work or live and work close to the port, where the air quality may be a little bit lower quality. We want to make sure that they have access to face masks that work. So who does all that? Well, it's amazing that Bank of America does that. But some of the work that I really want to talk about is the jobs initiative effort that we have with Prairie View A&M, as we work with really 21 colleges and universities, historical Black colleges, universities, and Hispanic Serving Institutes, to help those students graduate into corporate America jobs, really careers, creating economic mobility for them. It really is fascinating work. I never thought, I get to do interesting work all the time, but I never thought that I'd be helping a university and employers work on setting what should the curriculum look like for graduates coming out of Prairie View A&M in this case. Getting input from those employers. What skill sets are you looking for? What soft skills are you looking for? What hard skills are you looking for? And if employer talking to you, if those students come out of Prairie View looking out that way, will you hire them, right? So we're looking for more than just the job. We're looking for a career. This is a career pathway versus the old style that we're used to, where we would go to school, graduate, get a degree, and then come out and say, hey, I got a degree. Who wants to hire me? Let me get into the competition of trying to get a job. In this case, we're really trying to set it on its side and saying, employer, what are you looking for? Prairie View A&M University, can we do this in the curriculum? And can we get that student to come out ready to walk into a career at this top employer? Mm-hmm. I also want you to note that this is not about Bank of America. Look, we'll take all the graduates we can, that makes sense, but this is about lifting the economic recovery for all ethnicities, for as many students as we can, that they too may be able to prosper. We understand at Bank of America that unless that community prospers, only then will we be able to prosper as well. So we have a lot vested into the future of Black and Hispanic students. We know that they can do better. We know that corporations can do better in creating careers for them. Even if it's at a competitor, we're willing to do that. Dr. Simmons, I know you've been working some with Ebony Thomas, and I've been working with Catherine Black internally. We also working with Aspen Institute and NCII to help us determine what those curriculums, what those soft skills, what those hard skills should look like. And this is just really exciting, interesting work to be able to do this. I feel like all of us are going to be able to look back and say, boy, what a difference we made. But we must be able to execute and make it become reality. I'm glad that we have a shared vision, and I will tell you, there's nobody better than Dr. Ruth Simmons that we could partner up with to know that we are really vested in making this happen. She also happens to be, Dr. Simmons also happens to be the co-chair of the Greater Houston Partnership Racial Equity Committee, in which Hung Ogle, our Bank of America president here in Houston, is one of the original members of that committee as well. So we have a lot of partnerships here at work. It's important that we be able to be effective and make it come to fruition.
Like what I hear you all saying is that it takes an ecosystem of different actors coming at it from different angles and working together to have these discussions internally as well as externally to really push this agenda forward. So I'm a nonprofit person, so I'm going to have to ask this question, right? So this panel is about volunteerism and philanthropy and how the nonprofit sector has an important role in helping you do your work. And so I would love to hear a little bit about how you think nonprofits should be working in the areas of social and racial justice in particular. Let's start with Margaret. Since you're our resident
Myself,
nonprofit.
yeah. Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think, we have to start with the data and the facts to help make the case for why we need to attend to issues on housing or issues on career pathways or issues on health or whatever. And so, and as I say, that's, readily available to everybody. But I think the other thing that nonprofits, obviously I run one too, have to make a really compelling case that has, metrics, that has outcomes, that has, kind of value add, where, investors, philanthropies, like Bank of America, the day of kind of pray and spray is over with. People have to make a case, hold themselves accountable, root their work in data, and that's how you make progress. And that's how you build an organization from, what are our aspirations not only today, but 3 and 5 and 15 years in the future.
Mm-hmm. Rick, what do you see the nonprofit sector in your job? What role do they play in your work?
Well, I just want to add this to what Margaret's very wise comments, and that is, there is a phenomenon that we in this world must be very careful of. And that is, although we are well-meaning and we are busy designing programs that are going to help people, we can't leave people out of the equation when we are thinking about how to design what we're going to do. There is a very sad diminution, I would say, of trust today between many of the communities that we seek to serve and our enterprises. And this has come really sharply in relief to me recently when with the Greater Houston Partnership, we started looking at the issue of racial equity and what we could do for the community in Houston. And then we had perhaps the wisdom of speaking to people in the community and understanding that their views were often markedly different. Their priorities were often markedly different. And so one of the things to keep in mind if you're a nonprofit is that this thorny issue of respect is probably has to remain at the center of what we do. If there is doubt among the people we serve that we have respect for their interests, for their way of thinking, for their culture, we're not going to get very far, no matter how much we try to implement policies, because they will reject those policies very soundly, frankly. One good example of this is the vaccination program for COVID, where many communities are rejecting the idea of vaccines because they don't trust the purveyors of health to really serve their interests well. And that's very sad. So again, what I would say is I try to begin every outreach to our communities by beginning to stress how important it is to listen to them first. How important it is for us to know them well, how important it is for us to demonstrate respect for them before we even begin any interventions. And that often makes things go much better for us. We have much more success, it seems to me, when we do that. So I just wanted to make that point.
I have to add, I talk a lot about this with my students, beneficiaries first. There is kind of a level of expertise that when we have, or we perceive to have, when we go into communities and we say, we're going to fix your problem, and we don't actually talk to our clients. And so we have to be a little more bottom up. I'd say a lot more bottom up focused as nonprofit sector about what they actually think the solutions are and what they think the needs are. And as an educator, I think a lot about how I approach my students, even as my beneficiary, so to speak. Like, are they a part of this conversation, or am I just feeding them what they have to do and what I think they are learning? And so there is this give and take. You have to kind of be humble and accept that you're learning too, especially as we think about this topic around social and racial justice. Like, it makes some people uncomfortable. And so we have to be a little humble in how we approach it. But I appreciate that comment. Rick, would you like to add something about the?
Yeah, let me just follow up on some of that, because I find that extremely interesting. First of all, let me just say to the nonprofit leaders that are have joined us today, thank you for joining us. I think of the nonprofit leaders as frontline responders, particularly those that we volunteer with and serve on boards with, as they address basic needs, job skills, affordable housing. Thank you for all the work that you do. I often tell elected officials, if you really want people that are going to go back and fix it, those are your nonprofit leaders. They know how to get things done. Unfortunately in Houston and other parts of Texas, we've had more than our fair share of crisis, whether it's Allison, Harvey, Imelda, the Memorial Day floods, a couple of times the Memorial Day floods, oil collapse, COVID. None of those discriminated in terms of who they impacted. Everybody was impacted. But often for people of color communities, it is much tougher to be able to rebound from that and respond and be able to build back up. Often we see families that have finally made it to middle income, and now they lose their home because they didn't have insurance, when it flooded and they lost their vehicles, and they get kicked right back into low income or moderate income all over again. And it may be another generation before that family gets to see middle income again. It's a sad thing to see. I think nonprofits have to look at things a little bit differently. The need today is much greater than just philanthropy. It is about having families be able to be resilient, be able to have a long time commitment between public, private, and government to make this happen. I think part of the solution is where some of the nonprofit partners on the board of directors of the nonprofits, do they reflect the community that they serve? Do they understand the needs and the challenges and where the opportunities are? I believe that if you not grow up in a low to moderate income community or neighborhood, or in a rental home, or in an apartment, or multifamily members, generations living in a home, or a home impacted by unemployment or underemployment, that you don't have a 100% understanding of what it's like to come up in that environment and what those challenges are. There's no book that's going to show you or teach you what that is or what that's like or what that experience is like. So having that point of view, having somebody on your board of directors that has lived through that has come through that, who has persevered through that, to be able to share that experience and that journey with others, I think having that type of diverse critical thinking on your board is only going to make you better. We are looking at, when we review grant applications, we are looking at the makeup of the board of directors. We don't solely base decisions on that. But I will tell you that the committee that reviews the committee does look at that. What is the diversity of the board? Do they really understand? Are they going to help set? We're not looking for band-aids. We're looking for solutions, right? So are the people on the boards of directors of these nonprofits going to be able to get to solutions? And I would attest to you that you need to have a diverse set of data points of input in order to help get you there. I believe that is true, not just for nonprofits, but for profits for that matter. We always say that diversity in your investment portfolio is a great thing. I would attest to you that diversity in your leadership team, diversity in your company, diversity in your volunteer staff, diversity in your workforce, and certainly diversity in your executive leadership only stands to make you better.
That's great. I mean, my next question was really like, what are the takeaways? So if you're a nonprofit leader and you want to do better, you want to be better, you want to be more inclusive, what are some first steps? So Rick came up with a couple, right? Thinking about your board and maybe having a client or a community member on your board. Also having diverse set of employees. Is there some things that Margaret or Ruth, you would like to add? Like, what are some things these nonprofit leaders on the call can step off and say, these are things I can do. I can get some SMART goals and objectives around this agenda and where I want to go. I would love for y'all to kind of pinpoint a few things for them to try.
I would just say just quickly that, I think nonprofits do have the ability to be opportunistic about need and challenge and be kind of triage responders, whether it's on vaccines or the storm or whatnot. And we see it over and over and over. I mean, government is still trying to, get their act together, ask the right question, assemble the right group, meet the Open Meetings Act, whatever the various things are. And, nonprofits can, seize the day and step into the breach and do. And so I think that triage, that urgency, that meeting the moment is such an asset for nonprofits and really, elevates the organization, the esprit de corps, the community, et cetera. And we've just seen it over and over and over here in Texas. Rick gave a number of examples and Ruth does it every day.
Yeah, I would stick with the element of trust, because I think it's so important. Given what nonprofits do, I hate for a public not to understand well the value of what these volunteers and their organizations bring to us. And so much of that has to do with the way we communicate what we do. We know and understand the elements of what we do, but we have to remember we're often dealing with a public that does not understand what we're doing. So transparency is inordinately important, and examining your own way of disclosing what you're doing, making sure that you have a sense of what is understandable and what is not, communicating with some frequency about what you're doing. That only adds to the ability of your public to trust what you're doing, and to appreciate it. So it's very important for you to be appreciated, because when you get that buy-in from the people you serve, you get more opportunities for funding, you get more support from a variety of stakeholders. And so try to assess how good you are at communicating and how good you are as being transparent to the public.
Great. Rick, I know you started us off on this question. Is there anything we're missing you'd like to add for our nonprofit leaders?
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add is I had kind of gone down the road of, diversity on your board and your staff and what that would, the difference that it would make. We work very closely with the United Way of Greater Houston, and they have Project Blueprint, which has for 30 years existed. And through Project Blueprint, you're able to have a selection of people that have been trained that are interested and have a passion for serving on boards, and many of them come from underrepresented groups that go through that Project Blueprint training. We've also invested into a Bank of America funded scholarship at Rice University, which is the Rice University's continuing education school, to get Blacks and Hispanics to enroll so that they can complete the Leadership Institute for Nonprofit Executives, so that they too can have more insight into how to run nonprofits, how to be on their executive leadership, and maybe be an executive director or chair of the organization as well. So the opportunities are there to increase that diversity and give people opportunity, but at the end of the day, we've got to give people the opportunity to lead that maybe they have not had that opportunity before.
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of ties into my next question. We have these dual pandemics, right? We had a big social justice movement, and there were protests, and then COVID hit, and it kind of slowed things down. And I just would like to hear a little bit about your vision for the future, and to what extent do you think that we can really push this DEI approach forward? Because again, what's going to make this time different? I mean, like right now we're hearing a lot about Stop Asian Hate. I mean, like it just seems like there's this momentum around this topic, and I definitely want to be part of the solution and not close my ears and ignore it. But I also want you all to kind of give me a little bit of vision of what you think can happen because of this coalescence of people seeming to care simultaneously.
I'll jump in quickly,
Yeah.
just because I'm sure it'll be less inspiring. I never want to go after Ruth and Rick. Let's just say that. But I think, a couple of things. One is you hear people say we need to go back to normal. And I think we need not to go back to normal, because normal has, dramatically and grossly underserved so many of our neighbors. And so we've seen it in education, where we've revealed just, the stark reality around things like broadband ubiquity or health. Now your neighbor's health matters to you, and you want that neighbor to take a vaccine and so on. And so I think there have been some real teachable moments here, and we should use them not to go back to normal, but to talk about the consequences that have been revealed and what we're going to do differently. And Ruth knows this. I mean, we've made more progress in online education in the public sector in the last year than we made in the last 10 years prior to that. And so how do we use the momentum of, the demand for change and the opportunities for innovation and not get back to normal?
Mm. Rick, would you like to go?
I would tell you that I like the demand for change. That is so important. Look, sometimes we can get caught up in what progress looks like. And I would, just to be flat out honest with you, it may look different from the minority to a non-minority, what progress looks like. Sometimes we get caught up in, for example, what do we call Latinos? Do we call them brown? Do we call them people of color? We just get caught up in that conversation, and that moves the metric not one iota. Let's talk about jobs. Let's talk about positions. Let's talk about opportunities. And most of us don't have the wherewithal to control a huge group. So what can you do? What can you do as an individual? Who can you mentor? Who can you coach? Who can you help? Is it a neighbor? Is it a neighbor's child? Is it a student in high school? Is it a college student? Can you help somebody through your experience of what you have experienced, how you can be helpful to them and lay that road a little bit softer for them, be a safety net for them? I think that if each one of us takes that respect that Dr. Simmons speaks about and that influence and the responsibility, I think if each one of us does that, I know that there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise on the far left, and a lot of noise on the far right, and most of us live closer to the middle. Let's make sure that we're making a difference in what we can control. Robbie?
Thank you. Ruth?
That's a very hard one for me because, you know, to have lived so many decades and seen the difference between what life was like when I grew up and where we are today, I don't have any easy way to describe what I think will happen. But here's what I know, that the kind of overt hostilities that we're seeing today in the country are absolutely poisonous to this union. And the fundamental thing that I know we can do is to reduce that, to be more humane, to be more civil, to be more respectful to other people. Our country deserves that. Anybody who cares about the future of this nation ought to care about that. And so, so I know enough about this journey not to look for kind of false signs of solutions. Here's what I say to anybody who will listen to me. It's not about reaching a magic point where we can say that this problem is fixed. It's not about that. And moreover, if we look to that, we will never be satisfied. That's the one thing I've learned by living. Okay, is that's what I expected as a young person, that I'd reach that point where these issues would be resolved. But I realized that it's not really about that. And so that's not what I ask people to do. I ask people to every day get up and work on this. I don't ask them for a one solution, because I think there are many solutions, to be perfectly honest with you. We are so different, one from the other. We are so different in our views. There's no one solution that is ever going to fix this issue for us. So what can we do? We can show that we're committed to this path. We can show that we're working every day, full out, to try to address the difficulties that we have. We can work hard to reduce the impact of these hostilities. We can jump on anything that suggests that we're going over the edge. If we see that our fellow citizens are starting to attack Asian Americans, everybody in the country ought to be jumping all over that. Everybody, not a group charged with the responsibility, not one part of the nation. Everybody needs to jump on that right away. If we see people's rights being violated, everybody should be jumping on that. To me, the solution is the way we care for each other, because if we do that appropriately, we're going to find those solutions. We're going to improve the chances of that 5-year-old in Fifth Ward who doesn't think that they have a chance in life. I just want people to think of our humanity first and what our moral and ethical obligations are. And I want us to teach our kids how important that is, all the way up through college.
Thank you for that. I want to wrap up our conversation, but I want to give everybody like a 1 minute kind of what's the takeaway for you? Maybe something someone else said that you thought was really insightful, or one reflection, a personal reflection before we move on to the audience questions. Anybody want to go first?
Well, I'm going to pick up where Ruth left off and
Okay.
say that those little individual acts matter a whole lot. And this can get better, and it can also get worse. And we've seen in the last very, recent past 2 years, 3 years, things go from, bad to awful bad. And there's an ebb and flow to these things. And when I think about, for me, a high water mark was after 9/11, where we were Americans first. And people, I can almost cry thinking about it, because it was a moment where we came together. And, and now obviously it's much worse than that for a lot of reasons. So that's point number one. And point number two is, I think we have to have these expectations that our leaders are part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that is our expectation. And then last, I just want to say to both Rick and Ruth that I personally am inspired by both of them. Bank of America is a company that shows up. Not everybody does, and they've done it for over the long haul. It's not a flash in the pan. They didn't show up last week because they were leading the parade. They are the real deal. And Rick, you are privileged to work for a company that has that in its DNA, and it's not an accident. And Ruth, I've never said this to you before, but when you came back to Prairie View after being at Brown, I thought, wow, that is powerful, because that's the real work. That's where you're making a huge, huge difference. And I'm just inspired by what you personally do every day.
Thank you, Margaret. To me, what we're doing right now is part and parcel of what we're talking about. I think we're all different, but we're having the most marvelous conversation about what we think will work well for our country, for our communities. And it seems to me that I enjoy most the fact that I can go into Fifth Ward. I'm working with a community center in Fifth Ward, and to be able to go into that community center and have this kind of conversation with people who have very different perceptions. And then I can go to a high level meeting in Houston and speak with people who have very different perspectives on many things that I've heard in Fifth Ward. To me, that's what this country is about, that we have the capacity as a nation, not always possible around the world. We have the capacity as a nation, and it's a precious, precious thing to have these conversations because we are informed by a powerful set of values incorporated in the Constitution that we happen to believe in. And we have, because we have that, a common framework for how we move about and interact with each other and aspire to do things together and so forth. We have a special opportunity, if we don't blow it, to create the most magnificent experiment in the history of mankind. I think promulgating the importance of having these kinds of exchanges across difference. I preach that all the time as being one of the most important things that we can do for our country.
Rick?
Well, how can I follow that?
Sorry, somebody had to.
But all I can tell you is I am so inspired today. Just when I think of what Margaret Spelling has done throughout her career and the impact that she has made, and Dr. Simmons and what she has accomplished, and yet both every day striving to make our country better, boy, is there a lot of work to be done. And I am so grateful to both of you for the work that you do. And I think of President Bush and what he stood for and what the 1,000 points of light stood for, that's exactly what was on display today by Margaret spelling and Dr. Simmons. It's just, I am in awe, I'm inspired by you, and you energize me to keep going and trying to make a difference.
Okay, great. We are going to take some questions. Kenny, Dr. Taylor sent me a message, and good luck to you all. Answer this question. What can be done as a nation to underwrite the cost of college education for our students? We have a lot of students on the call, and they're thinking about their student loans in particular. So you'll have any thoughts on what that looks like going forward?
Well, and I've spoken extensively about the arms race in higher education and how we need to turn that around. We are very competitive as a sector, and that means that when one university builds a climbing wall, everybody else follows because they want to compete for the best students. Well, once you start putting all of that together, all of the extras that come with education, somebody has to pay for it, and tuition gets higher and higher. I happen to know from my own experience that it doesn't take all of that to have a wonderful learning experience. And so I advocate that we ought to think hard about the way that we are adding to cost in education so that we can reduce the tuition that we're charging our students. I don't ever see a moment when our country does what most countries in the rest of the world do, and that is to make college education free. We started as a private system in the colonial era, and we grew up that way. There are many advantages to the kind of system we have, which is it's innovative, it's different, it's private, it's single sex, it's religious, it's all over the place. And it's what Americans tend to like about our educational system. It's been immensely productive in so many ways, certainly with regard to innovation, and people flock to this country for our education because it is so unique. But we shouldn't have to have people going into debt for so many years of their lives just to have an education. So I think the solution, there are a number of solutions that I have proposed. One is that not all universities should compete to be in the AAU. We used to have universities that were state colleges that focused more on teaching. They didn't try to compete for research dollars, but now everybody's competing for research dollars. And once you start doing that, you're no longer the affordable college that is focused on your curriculum and your teaching. You're now going into a completely different sort of business. So I'd like to see states get back to, in addition to the community colleges, 4-year institutions that are held to account to remain low cost and available to a wider swath of students.
And I'll just build on that. I agree with every bit of that. And one of the things that I think is a bit of a silver lining in COVID is that people are now much more price sensitive. They understand they can get a great education starting at a community college and going to a public university, that those pathways, those stackable credentials really are more accessible. I mean, why pay top dollar for an online course at an elite private when you can essentially get the same thing for virtually free at a community colleges? So I think an empowered consumer with a lot more data and this emphasis on our community college and our community colleges and our comprehensive universities, the Stephen F. Austins, the UT Arlingtons, the U of H downtowns, the Prairie View A&Ms, and so on. I think they're really, consumers are getting a lot smarter in this moment.
That's interesting. Rick, is there anything you want to add before we move on to the next question?
Build on those two experts. The only thing that I would tell you is that I think we need to do a better job of teaching families to save for education, prioritize education, how to invest. I think when you survey mothers
of kids less than 18 years old, what they will tell you is that financial literacy is one of the most important pieces that they want for their kids that are less than 18 years old. And we need to do a better job of prioritizing education, but we also need to do a better job of teaching people how to save for that and invest.
Yeah. Kenny Taylor, you have any questions for us? I haven't got to read all the chat, so I know you're monitoring that for us.
I'm going to go to Rick for this one. It's a question that I've investigated some, and since you alluded to your concern or Bank of America's concern for diversifying boards, one of our attendees tonight posed the question of, as nonprofit organizations think about diversifying their boards, there's a couple of issues at play. One is people of color may not have the network that, say, in this case, at least the way the question was posed, as white males do. And then also the question of, as we diversify boards, does that have the potential to negatively impact funding? And just to set that up, I've always personally looked at, as nonprofit organizations diversify their boards, there's places that they can now go into that maybe they weren't once able to, just by having folks that looks like a variety of business owners and corporation heads and executives look like. But the question, I guess, is, as nonprofits consider diversifying their boards, what conflicts do we see about the potential of losing funding because some people of color may not have the finances or the networks that others do?
Yeah, again, thank you. That's quite an assumption that people of color do not have networks or not able to network. I can tell you that I'm a person of color and I have pretty extensive network of sources. But I get the gist of the question. I think there's different purposes for different board members. Some of them are going to bring you great. You take everybody on this panel, and somebody has to have a higher, a greater network than somebody else. That's just a fact. But you have a different purpose of people on boards. They can bring experience. They can look at the programs that you have. I know that I've been part of some nonprofits when they've developed a program about exercising or how people could exercise in their neighborhood. And part of that was, all they need is a pair of shoes and go run in the neighborhood. I said, well, it depends on what the neighborhood looks like, right? So having that perspective can make a difference. They may be able to network in a different circle of funding if that's what you're looking for. Maybe they have a greater network in the minority segment. Maybe they have a network in business owners. Maybe they have a network in other specific areas. I think the board, just like anything else, give people an opportunity. I mean, look, it's March Madness time, right? And you put a basketball team on the court today and just watch the magic happens when a lower seed team wins and beats that higher seeded team that on paper looked like it was much better. I go back to giving people the opportunity, having the flexibility on your nonprofit, on your board, to have a start somewhere on bringing more diversity onto your boards. And let me also say that sometimes a board at a nonprofit maybe adds one or two people of color and they say, boy, we've done a lot of work. Don't get confused in the numbers. Look at your numbers, do the math. What does that look like? And where can different people with different background, with a different experience, with a different journey in life, what value can they add to your board and to your volunteer efforts and to your programs? Ken?
Margaret or Ruth, would y'all like to add anything to that question?
I just agree completely with Rick about, you're trying to build a totality of a team, some of whom are going to be fundraisers, but, maybe this is an individual that brings a client point of view or whatever. But I think it's part of this diversity discussion that we're having right now is to think about a board as a symphony of players.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I should add that this is a very common perception that people have. I remember when I was up for presidency, I think people said, well, but she's Black, and would she be able to raise money? That has held back a lot of people because of the presumption. And instead, when I ran a $1.6 billion campaign, I think people are very surprised by that. So you cannot attach these kinds of profiles to individuals. You just can't, because you have to go for the quality of the individual, for what they bring to your organization, because if they bring a lot of assets of any kind, they are going to be a net positive for you as an organization. The thing about people who provide funds to organizations is they know absolutely how to read the quality of your organization, and they can read the quality of the members of your board. And so you shouldn't be reluctant to appoint someone who doesn't have that experience at all, because they could, in fact, be one of the best people on your board for attracting additional support.
Okay. Well, it's about that time for me to hand it over to Dr. Will Brown. I appreciate you all for engaging in these conversations and let me poke some questions at you. And I'll hand it over to Will.
Several folks said how I really appreciate the conversation and reflections, ideas, and the interplay.
Your mic's not working, Will. I don't know what's happening. It's a really cool effect. We can't hear what you're saying.
Are you underwater?
No webinars complete without a problem.
Does that work?
Yes,
Better.
that's good.
No webinars complete without a little technical.
No, absolutely not.
As I was citing one of the comments, a powerful panel and wonderful to be able to see the interaction between everybody and the dialogue. So I thank you all for participating in that way. I'm going to share one thing with the participants, all of you who came tonight. I appreciate that a lot. I do want to just draw your attention to one program, just point at one back at the slide, let you know the next week we have a nice webinar. So that's a free webinar. And I just wanted to draw your attention to Dr. Humphreys, who's going to help us with cultural competencies next week. So this helps in thinking about our leadership. But yes, thank you all very much. There's a little bit on the center. Please follow what we're doing, and what a privilege to be able to have this conversation this evening. Thank you all and have a good night.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rick.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Margaret. Good to see you.
See you guys.
Kenny, you're on mute.
Thank you guys so much. It's great to meet you.
Good to meet you.
All right, Dr. Simmons.
Okay.
Rick, thanks so much, man.